Welcome to sistah'splace inspiration and entertainment show interviews with authors, celebs, and much more with hostesses Latrice Carter and Selena Haskins.
Welcome to sistah'splace podcast. I am Latrice Carter, and today my special guest is Adrian Carter. Adrian Carter is the author of his newly released Let's Get Married and Do Everything Except Make It Last. Interesting title, right? It is. And we are going to dive into an awesome interview today and learn more about why he wrote this particular book and what it means, what he wants our readers and listeners to be able to walk away with after they've read his book, as well as what is the objectives and goals for this particular book. And at the same time, you'll learn a little bit about Adrian Carter. And I also want to touch base with him on talking about some of the issues that we're having in our community, with police brutality. Want to learn what COVID-19 has taught him, and also find out what he's learned about himself after writing this particular book. Now, Adrian Carter is a conflict resolution expert. So his feedback and thoughts today on being a black man in America, going through the police brutality, being an expert conflict resolutionist, how he would handle the situation at hand. We've had so many awful killings these last few months during this pandemic year 2020. So sit back, grab your favorite beverage, and check out my interview with Adrian Carter. All right. Welcome to sistah'splace podcast. Today I am interviewing author Adrian Carter. Adrian, welcome to sistah'splace podcast.
Thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure. I appreciate it.
Oh, you're so welcome. So welcome. So just so our listeners can learn a little bit about you, tell our listeners about who Adrian Carter is and what you like to do for fun.
Okay. I am a leadership development trainer and a conflict resolution practitioner, and I'm an author of my most recent book, Let's Get Married and Do Everything Except Make It Last. And, a lot of what I do is work with corporate entities or communities and individuals to help them understand how to identify and resolve conflict and how to become better leaders as individuals and in our leadership positions in family and in life in corporate settings. As far as fun, I like jet skiing.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And when I'm in shape, I like to play sports, and, whether it's flag football or basketball. I do play a lot of tennis. I play tennis every week, not as much as I would like to actually, but I like to actually do it a lot more. But I've not been having a whole lot of fun lately. My fun has been promoting this book and working on my dissertation for my doctorate. So that's my fun nowadays. As soon as I get out of this space, I'll be able to have some more fun.
Okay, awesome. Sounds good. How long have you been a writer, and how did you get your start?
I started writing poetry when I was 9 years old. I competed in the Theodore Gibson Oratorical Contest, which was done through Miami-Dade College down here in South Florida. And I've been first at my school. I've placed at the contest overall. And so moving through elementary and middle school, I was an avid writer and a spoken word performer. My more deep in writing came when I got into college. I was a journalism major, so writing and storytelling was something that I've always had a knack for doing. Mm-hmm. I published 3 books of poetry when maybe started around 2014 or 2015 is when I purchased my first book of poetry. And I went on to publish 2 more. And then in 2018, I published my first leadership development book. And now here in 2020, publishing it's really part 2 of my leadership development book. It's just specific to relationships and speaking to men about love and leading.
Okay, sounds good. So you have a very interesting book title. How did you choose the book title for this latest release?
I was at a poetry spot, and a fabulous poet named Camellia Red Writing Hood was performing, and she has a piece that it says it's something to the effect of "Let's do everything except get married." And she talked about being in a relationship with a man, having a child, and she painted this picture of doing everything that is married or marriage-like, but at certain points in the relationship, he's able to condone his behavior or his decisions by saying, we're not married. And so it was them doing everything except getting married. I was married at the time when I first heard that poem, and the poem was very intriguing to me. And as a married man and in a relationship that was just falling apart, I felt that my version of that poem was, let's get married and do everything except make it last, right? The same way her version was, let's do everything except get married. And I felt like, well, we had gotten married and we were doing everything except making it last. And I wrote my version of the poem. And I remember sharing that with someone at one time, and their feedback was not what I expected. Their feedback was very underwhelming. And that highlighted to me that I needed to explain myself in much more detail. And so it moved from being just a poem to this body of work that talks about our social construct and our gender roles and our socialized way of thinking and how it intersects into conflict in so many aspects of our lives, and what we could do to help steer that off and restructure our thinking.
Okay. What is the message that you like for readers when they pick this book up that you want them to take away from the book? And is there more than one message?
Yeah, there is this overarching message that is not so explicit in the book, but my follow-up as a message for the book is I want men and women, especially Black men and women, to understand that it's important for us to build family structures and have a family nucleus based on our terms and not our Eurocentric American white picket fence idolized version of relationships that I think Black people and Black women specifically like to aim for. And in order for us to do that, we have to do a lot of what the book is saying. We have to remove the thinking of how we view provision and protection from a man. And we have to take into consideration the deeper emotional feelings that men experience in this walk of love, marriage, and relationships. And so those are some of the takeaways that I think are important for people to, or that people are going to get when they get the book and they start to read. It's a very optimistic book about marriage, as much as it uses my personal relationship to underscore a lot of these issues that I'm highlighting. But what you pull away from it is that we have to do things different, especially in the 21st century. We cannot practice a la carte feminism and pull from the past what's most convenient for us. And both men and women are doing that. They whatever is going to give them the hands up to having more power or control is what they're going to pull from, and including the double standards. Mm-hmm. My book is aiming to eliminate those double standards. It's aiming to put us on equal footing in understanding the great capacity that women bring to the table. Mm-hmm. And I want men to separate themselves from the overburden of patriarchy. And so those are some of the very concrete elements that my book is discussing, and hopefully readers walk away having a transformative experience after reading it.
Absolutely, absolutely. And from everything that you've said so far, and in our previous talk, it's like Black America need to come up with their own norms for relationships and family. Correct? Is that what I'm gaining from what you're saying?
Yes, it is. And notwithstanding, I believe that everyone should have the ability to create the relationship and the dynamics within the relationship they want. Mm-hmm. The problem is a lot of people are just retracing a rubric that's already established, mm-hmm. that says that the middle class or the upper middle class to rich to wealthy landscape of relationships is supposed to look like this. And women, Black women especially, they want they want the opportunity that a lot of white women, or at least the narrative is that a lot of white women have had, which is the opportunity to be to be taken care of in a system, in a capitalistic system that's designed for white men and white women. Mm-hmm. And so there's nothing wrong with wanting that, but the system was never designed to give you that. And in the process of communicating to men, I believe that communication gets lost on men because Black men in general don't have the wealth or the capital to provide that lifestyle. Again, because that particular system was never created for Black people. Mm-hmm. It was created for white women, white middle class, upper middle class men to be able to provide that 1950s lifestyle of provision and protection. But if you go back to the 50s and the 60s, what were Black women and men doing during that time? Yeah, we may have our Madam C.J. Walker, but she's an anomaly, right? We didn't have a whole bunch of Madam C.J. Walkers walking around.
Right.
What we had was one like her. And while there were other great Black women and Black men doing great things in that time, the reality is the vast majority of them were, to me, are more reminiscent of Viola Davis's role in the movie The Help.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You see, so they were raising the children and being the homemakers, or, you know, the maid in the home, and those type of things. So in order for us to, as a community, have a different result, I think it's imperative that we start to look at relationships in our more community Afrocentric background than in the European individualistic background. Mm-hmm. What has happened is women want men to be collectivist, which is to be community minded. And the women have a tendency to want to be individualistic, which is the individualism or the Eurocentric mindset. Then she wants him to bring her into his community. So he's supposed to provide and protect and give, while she remains the center of that community in an individualistic mindset, because his giving is to her. And it kind of goes back to the happy wife, happy life. Mm-hmm. It kind of goes back to the, you know, his money is our money, but her money is her money. Those are very individualistic constructs that the woman is practicing, while expecting the man to practice a very communal, Afrocentric, communal, collective mindset. Those two are going to run contrary. And I know that, and I see a lot of that play out in our social construct when people are talking online and, you know, at different venues and having these conversations around relationships. If we can just go back to what I call in the book as one of the solutions, the we conversation, we provide for each other. We protect each other. We are working together, and stop the discussion about capital and relationships that's Eurocentric and individualistic, and move back to that African root and that collectivist mindset. I think will be so much better for it. Will be so much better for it, because again, this capitalistic, individualistic mindset or system that we're operating in was never designed for us.
And it's destroying us instead of it's not doing any justice for us.
Alrighty. So as we were talking about after writing this book, what was it that you learned about yourself?
You know, for me, that learning about myself was more so the journey along the way. It took me 4.5 years to write the book. And I was also going through my doctoral program while writing the book. And my doctoral program is conflict resolution studies.
Okay.
And so we're learning about conflict, interpersonal conflict. And one of the processes throughout the class is resolving the conflict for yourself, right? Is understanding where we're conflicted. And I mean, the creed is, physician, heal thyself. And in order for us to be of any good to anybody else, we have to resolve our own conflict, and we have to be willing to step outside of ourselves in order to do that and challenge ourselves. So a lot of that was going on with me as I was understanding conflict at this deeper level and understand what it looked like for myself. Then I stopped writing the book, and I worked on my leadership book, because I felt the leadership book, which is a more catch-all book, needed to come out first before really talking specifically about relationships. Okay. And then I came back and finished this book here. And so the process for me was always very enlightening and enriching, because I had to resolve a lot of those interpersonal conflicts for myself before being effectively doing it for others. And ultimately, I had to become the book before I published the book.
Right. Okay.
I had to, 1 second.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, I had to become the book before I could publish the book.
Okay.
Meaning I had to become the man who understood my purpose, before talking about the importance of purpose. I had to understand how to resolve my own internal conflicts before promoting the importance of resolving your internal conflicts. And the we conversation that I talk about, and having that collectivist mindset, that's something that I always had. But I was able to deepen that understanding in knowing how it impacted our family nucleus at an even deeper level, especially when we talk about wealth building. So the whole process for me has been an execution of learning about myself. Post writing the book, I'm just happy women are not as mad with me as I thought they were going to be.
Okay. Well, when you come correct, they're usually really good.
Yeah,
have those that will attack you.
I thought women were going to be like just ready to burn me at the stakes, but it has actually been the opposite. Women have been very supportive, very, very supportive, and what the feedback has been that the transparency, the vulnerability, and the honesty of the book is something that they never expected.
Okay.
And that they are so happy to have a thought process, to be able to see the thought process of a man, and to be able to understand those deeper thoughts and emotions that men go through that they normally don't have this level of a bird's eye view. So for what it's worth, to them, they've been extremely, extremely supportive and excited about the book. So I'm happy with that. I'm surprised by it, but I'm happy with it, and I'm grateful.
Well, good. Now, so being a Black man, can you share your thoughts on the recent police brutality against Black and Brown, being yourself a conflict resolution expert?
Yeah, this type of conflict and violence and crisis that we're facing is it's systemic. It has always been profound, and it will always be. It's going to always require a lot of work, because we're dealing with such entrenched, such systemic and pervasive level of hate that people don't even realize they hate when they're hating, right? They don't even realize that they perpetuate the system almost just by participating in it. Right? It's almost like you perpetuate it. If you own a credit card, you perpetuate the system. You know what I mean? Like, don't even if that's not your intent. And we have a lot of work to do. I think I'm happy to see what has been happening over the past few months. It's unfortunate that it takes what it's taking. But I mean, my God, if it wasn't for camera phones, where would we be?
No, right?
If it wasn't for camera phones, where would we be? And so I'm grateful for that. I think we are definitely caught up in a major paradigm shift. Socially, we're caught in a paradigm shift when it comes to interpersonal relationships and romantic relationships. We're caught in a paradigm shift politically. Trump has stirred that up so much. And then because all of these things are interconnected with the unarmed killings of our Black men and our Black women, the world, the world is feeling the social pressure to respond politically, religiously, economically, and all sorts. I'm thankful for Trump in office, because what Trump did in a lot of ways is he emboldened the racist people.
Yes.
And so they came out, with the S on their chest, ready to be racist. And we always knew they were there, but it was very covert, very underhanded for a very long time, because the overtness of racism was just totally unacceptable. Trump made it appear acceptable.
He removed the sheets.
He definitely removed the sheet, and it made it. And now that it's been uncovered, people are out here walking around, and now the world can properly respond to it. I mean, look at how businesses are responding, right? Yes. And even though I know they want Black dollars, I get it. We spend a lot of money, but at least they're responding. I don't think we can ask for something and then when we get it, say that it's just ingenuine.
Right.
Right. So I think it's better that we're getting something than nothing. And I also believe that while a lot of us don't like to have the conversation about Black on Black crime, mixed in with police brutality as a conversation, I do think it's relevant to discuss. It's not a but and it's not an or conversation. It's an and conversation.
Exactly.
Police brutality is a serious problem within our system, and it's systemic in a lot of ways. And our Black on Black crime situation needs to be resolved.
Yes,
not because, race crimes between races happen all the time. It's usually the case that a white person harms another white person. It's usually the case that, someone of pick a race is going to harm someone, kill, whatever the extent of that is within the same race. The problem with us as Black people is not the proximity, it's the frequency.
Yes.
The frequency to which we harm each other is mind-boggling. Now, as a conflict resolution practitioner, I have to look at all sides of it.
Mm-hmm.
And in looking at all sides of it, I have to understand the social implications and at some degree, the psychological implications.
Mm-hmm.
The psychological implication to me is this. If you don't respect your own lives, why should we?
Right.
If you don't respect your own lives, why should we? Why does the police not do the same thing to other groups of people? Because something about other groups of people, they know they'll come for you. Right. Police understand that they are able to, that these other groups of people will come for them politically and economically. They'll underfund some things. Some new people will end up in office. They will retaliate. But the Black community has shown that it doesn't respect itself.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we understand that at a personal level. But for some reason, people seem to lack the understanding when we move it from the micro level of individuals to the macro level of our greater society. If someone is treating you poorly and you have a conversation with somebody, they'll tell you, man, you got to respect yourself. You got to demand that respect from that other person, man. You can't let nobody talk to you like that. Mm-hmm. And so we leave that meeting or that conversation feeling empowered, and then we demand respect. Right? We demand that people talk to us and treat us a certain way. Well, in that same conversation, they'll say, well, man, how can you expect somebody to respect you if you don't respect yourself? Right. See, we understand that at an individual level. I think at a racial and at a group level, it remains consistent. You cannot expect other groups of people to respect you if people within their own group don't respect themselves.
Absolutely. I agree with that. I totally agree with that.
So I'm hopeful that as we continue to correct it at that global group, at the level of the police brutality issue, that we also are mindful to correct it amongst ourselves, because I think those two do walk hand in hand. Again, one doesn't trump the other.
Right.
Right. And one doesn't override. Of course, unarmed, without reason is ridiculous to be shooting somebody 7 times. But that is such a deep, cemented idea about the Black man and the Black image as being criminal.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's been taught to white America.
Yes.
Even when the white boy has more drugs on him, they still search the Black boy and they let the white boy go. Right. Black men has been framed as a criminal in our society, when in fact, the white man is the real criminal in our society.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea of who we are, it was created by them. So when we act in concert, you created this, white man.
Yep.
You framed us in this particular light in order to incarcerate us and continue to perpetuate your system of slavery. Mm-hmm. You just call it something else. You did this. Mm-hmm. So we are a product of them in that way. Mm-hmm. But we can do better for ourselves, and we can help our cause by demonstrating respect to ourselves and responding in concert.
Absolutely. Wow, that was I'm at awe just by that comment alone, because I totally agree with you. Respect. White America created the monster that has come alive. Thank you for that comment. So to relax the mood a little bit, who are some of your favorite authors that you read and why?
Some of them are, one is my mentor, Dr. Hunt, Dr. Okay. Dale G. Hunt. He was a sociologist. I believe he had his doctorate in public administration. He was also my pastor. He's been a professor of mine. I grew up with Dr. Hunt, and a lot of my way of thinking and processing, I learned from him.
Okay.
And it was how to see the world different from how it's presented itself.
Mm-hmm.
right? It was how to read the Bible, but how to understand it in a way that is different from the common dogma that religious denominations may talk about, and to be able to see the conflict and the oppression in it.
Mm-hmm.
So he really, you know, being under his tutelage, under his mentorship since I was 7 years old, until he transitioned 2 years ago, has been what has ultimately shaped who and how I am in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
The second author that really stands out for me is Stephen Covey. And Stephen Covey, who wrote, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, was a mind-blown book for me.
Mm-hmm.
And that really transformed my thinking in just in understanding leadership, right?
Mm-hmm.
And understanding myself, the importance of self-leadership. And on a more whimsical note, Judy Blume. Judy Blume is a children's author. Super Fudge, Tales of a Fourth Grade Nothing. Hi God, It's Me, Margaret. I believe she's the author of those books. So I grew up reading Judy Blume's book, and I just always loved her storytelling ability and the characters that she created and whatnot. So from my mentorship with Dr. Han, for sustained leadership with Stephen Covey and his body of work, and for the fun aspect of Judy Blume with the books, those are my favorite authors.
Okay, those are good. Those are some good choices. With the pandemic, since the pandemic this year, what and everyone being at home, working remote, what has the pandemic taught you this year?
A lot of gratefulness. From a personal standpoint, it taught me a lot of gratefulness. I am grateful in so many ways for the opportunities that I've had throughout the pandemic. I'm also an educator, so I remained employed as an educator. Mm-hmm. I've been able to continue working on my dissertation. So I was able to use the time well for myself.
Mm-hmm.
But that's understanding, in contrast, a lot of people did not have the same opportunities.
Yeah.
And for that, I've been very grateful. People were losing jobs, losing family members. It's been tragic. It's been hell for a lot of people, mm-hmm. quite frankly. And that's adults and young kids alike. As an educator, we learned how much kids are unprepared,
mm-hmm.
technologically. What's happened is we confuse children's ability to use social media and to always be on their phone as being technologically, aware or intelligent,
mm-hmm.
but they're not. They don't know how to use Microsoft Office. They don't know how to use Word products. They don't necessarily know how to get around on a computer, attach something, send an email. So so I learned that a lot of our children are not equipped to operate within the 21st century. Now, we didn't need the pandemic to tell us that.
Right.
But it definitely exposed that, a lot more. But I know from a social perspective, it definitely unearthed how unprepared we are in a lot of ways as a society. The thing that irks me the most is how committed we are to doing things the same way, even when we know it doesn't work.
Yes, thank you.
That just irks me. Like we watch it not work.
And still do it.
And then be like, well, run it again. And you're like, but you, and then people be like, well, it's just the system, it's just, ain't nothing we can do. Yes, there is. Just stop. It's that floors me. It absolutely floors me. And unfortunately, as highly intelligent of people we have around us, people with all of these degrees, people with all of this money, people with all of this whatever, it's unfortunate how we act and behave when we have all the resources we need. And I'm one personally, I think God kind of leaves us to our own devices.
Mm-hmm.
I'm off that thinking. Now, I do believe he's present in our lives. I believe the Spirit of God someone is able to reach out and build a relationship. But I think on a mass level, just like how parents are with children, after teaching your children right from wrong and giving them the resources they need emotionally, intellectually, and even economically to survive in the world, you push them out of the nest, and they are responsible for going out and making something of themselves. And they can't come back and say, well, what should I do? You've already taught them what to do.
Mm-hmm.
I think God treats us the same way. What you gonna ask him for food? Do you know how much food we waste in the world? Right.
Mm-hmm.
Ask him for more resources. You know how many he gave us an earth full of resources. But I get it. We have a system. We have people that commit greed, people who are self-centered, and we battle against those evil influences. I totally get that. But if one thing that we learned from COVID is how unprepared we are as a society and how backwards we are, especially for a group of people who have more than enough capital to fix a lot of the problems that we have.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, tell our listeners how they can get your book, Let's Get Married and Do Everything Except Make It Last.
The book is available on Amazon, and it's also available through my website. But again, that would just link you back to Amazon. My website is www.adriancarterspeaks.com. And there's a link on my website. There are links on my social media handle, which is Adrian Carter Speaks. That's at IG, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. And by all means, grab the book, leave a review, and let me know. I would love to get your feedback. I'm available. You could email me through my website, and I love to be able to have conversations with people and get their feedback. But it's very simple to get. Just go on Amazon.
Okay. All righty. Well, thank you so much for being on Sistah's Place podcast today. I am going to pick up my copy because I am so intrigued. And I like to read a lot of the authors that I do interview. So I'm looking forward to reading your book. I'll post a picture when my book comes, and I'll definitely make sure I post a review as well. Looking forward to it. Okay, so that's our show today, everybody. Make sure I will post the link in our on our social media pages for you all to grab your copy of his book, and as well as his website information. And we will talk to you all next time.
Be sure to subscribe to Latrice's YouTube channel, Sistah's Place, and follow her on all social media.